No problem, Gino. This guy blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there. Eat shit and die, Ricky. Eat shit and live, Bill. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by on this beautiful summer day to talk about a beautiful summer camp horror movie by the name of Sleepaway Camp that came out, I want to say, in 1982 or sometime around there. Early 80s, the absolute beautiful heyday of these horror movies, slasher movie craze is going on, and all kinds of people, including Robert Hiltzik, that are who are independent, are getting in the game and becoming really big cult classics in their own right. I was trying to think of when I first saw this, and I don't know if I saw this probably when I was 12 or 13, maybe 13, maybe just having turned recently 13. So, at the latest I saw this, my dad and I would have rented this when I was 13, and I remember, as a 13-year-old, it didn't do a whole hell of a lot for me, because as a 13-year-old, I was more into just, kind of like the on-screen villains, they were like the super villains for me, like Jason, Freddy, Leatherface, where you could see the character. I mean, for me as a kid, the killer character was a big part of the horror movies. So as a kid, wasn't necessarily a big fan of these kind of movies where the killer was a mystery, the first Friday 13th or this first Sleepaway Camp. So I think we did see this when I was 13, or rented it when I was 13, and I do remember the ending actually really of course unexpected. Really creeped me out, being a heterosexual 13-year-old at the time, and in particular when you're kind of like, throughout the whole movie, you're kind of like, oh, she's just shy and cute, and I'd be nice to her and stuff, and then as a I think it's probably more damaging possibly as a heterosexual male watching this, particularly if you're I was kind of the age Angela was in the movie when I saw it, so then to have the ending be like what it was is just like, oh my gosh, you kind of feel like, I've been looking at her. Of course, she was a real girl who played her, but you know what I'm saying. It was just definitely a mind fuck for viewers, and potentially maybe more straight male viewers. But basically, the story behind this movie, from what I understand, is unfortunately, like when Robert Hiltzik was in his early to mid 20s, his mom died, and from what I understand, he took the insurance money he got from his mom dying and went off and made this horror movie. So that's what he did, and so this is just like it almost was, and we kind of still consider it a one-off kind of a movie, because let's face it, I mean, as much as we all want to like things about Return to Sleepaway Camp, I'm afraid it's really hard to find things about that movie to like. But so this movie is really interesting, where it's just a freaking mid-20-something wrote and directed and financed and basically made this movie. And from what I understand, this movie was basically written kind of inspired by his experiences at summer camp that he had. And from what I understand, the actual camp location that they filmed this movie at was the actual camp location that he attended as a child or teenager, or whatever ages he was when he went there, which is really cool. And from what I know, unfortunately, from as far as I know, I don't think the camp they filmed this movie at exists anymore, which is a real, oh my god, it's a real bummer. But anyway, on to my review of Sleepaway Camp, which I would regard, now it didn't really necessarily do much for me as a 13-year-old, but now as an adult, I just, and in particularly going, as the years go on, becoming further and further away from the 80s and the early 80s, this movie every year, just becomes more and more of a staple of such a, great era gone by, or we like to, I don't know if I can say great era gone by or whatever. We like to, romanticize, eras of our past or whatever. But from whatever, regardless of whatever it was, we definitely, kind of regard this early 80s as just a, whatever, a great era from our childhood or past or youth or whatever. So this movie really fantastically captures the early 80s, just being a low-budget movie and shot at this actual summer camp location is absolutely fantastic. I should say right off the bat that the opening credits of this movie are absolutely fantastic, and I don't want to forget to mention, so I'll just do it now before I forget, the guy he got to do the music for this movie is absolutely freaking, the music is absolutely freaking amazing. I mean, it's just perfectly, goes along with this movie. It's absolutely perfect. In the opening credits, that, what we're meant to understand is they taking place kind of in the fall of, presumably the fall of, this summer, that all of these murders and stuff happen at Camp Arawak. It's really cool, just doing this pan, and dissolve through different locations of the camp and hearing this kind of ghostly, audio of, hey, you better get away from me with that pail of water, I'll kill you. All this kind of just ghost sounds of, things, events of the past that took place possibly in the past summer, just months before. Now going through this empty camp and presumably the fall and seeing all just, the empty remnants of where kind of the crime scenes, not that we're seeing nothing but crime scenes, but just the area or the location of where, the crimes presumably, weeks or months earlier took place. It was really, really kind of a cool way to open the movie, and then finally panning over to just like the sign, Camp Arawak, and whatever it says on the thing, for sale, there's a for sale sign on it. It's just like, oh man, what happened here? And then of course that's the end of the opening credits, and we dissolve into the classic thing that happens in a lot of these early 80s horror movies with the event that kind of, I wouldn't say that this event necessarily started. I mean, it started the whatever. It lays the groundwork for what will come in the movie, but it's hard to say that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. The movie probably wouldn't happen if this event hadn't happened, which is just at this, after the kind of the fall opening credit scene, we dissolve to a more summerish looking day, and this guy in this sailboat's got this girl and boy in the sailboat, and their Camp Arawak, I think, is across the lake. They can see it, and there's this water skier, and there's like, oh boy, these kids with these really heavy East Coast accents. That looks neat. Can I try, Daddy? I bet maybe, can we go to camp one summer? I bet they show us there. When I was a kid, I always thought people from like that had that East Coast accent were just idiots. Like, I thought they were mentally incompetent, and then it wasn't until later I realized, oh, that's just the accent in that area of the world. It was just, or the country / world. I was like, oh. But it just sounds like, not to knock any East Coast viewers, but as a kid, it just always sounded like a mentally deficient individuals if they had that really heavy East Coast accent. But what I'll just cut to the chase, and there ends up being a water, the water skier a boat we'll just say there ends up being a boat accident, which in a really kind of a cool way, they, obviously there's a little boy and a little girl, and this guy in the sailboat. There was a motorboat accident. That motorboat crashed into the sailboat, and basically we see the adult male guy dead, floating through the water. And what's really cool, Robert Hilton does a really cool thing where he shows a kid splashing in the water from behind, so you don't know if it's the boy or the girl that survived. And then we see a basically destroyed, possibly by a propeller, motorboat propeller, life vest float from underneath up onto the onto the surface of the water in a little detail that's really kind of fake, because I don't think you could, there really wouldn't be a reason why a life vest would be submerged under the water like that in the first place. But whatever, it was just kind of a cool way for Robert Hiltzik, without any dialogue or words, to express that one of the kids was indeed, without showing a kid corpse or whatever. It's just a way to show one of the kids was indeed killed. And then cutting to, I think, 8 or so years later, we see this in this big house, and this, I want to say, I do want to say this character that I think Desiree Gould, I want to say, is the actress who plays this character of Aunt Martha. I find her to be extremely annoying, and this scene is really, really probably the hardest scene for me to get through, just because of her portrayal of that character is just so freaking annoying. And I can imagine a lot of people in the theater just walking out, like, is this going to be a main character? I'm leaving. But yeah, that's kind of a hard scene to sit through with I mean, Desiree does a great job because it's so annoying, or what, she does a great job at being this character slash annoying or whatever, but oh my gosh. So basically we're introduced to Angela and Ricky at this point, and um, I can't remember, it's kind of confusing, like, I guess at this point, yeah, so Ricky is the actual son of this woman, Martha, I think, and then, you know, Angela, of course, is the surviving, you know, well, presumably the girl from the beginning of the movie that presumably survived the motorboat accident, who I guess is now, is she living? It's kind of confusing. Is she living with them now? Probably. Basically Ricky's cousin is just, they just took her in and now is, for all intents and purposes, you know, sister or, well, whatever, just living there or whatever. So I don't know if she's living there or just visiting or whatever, but Ricky and Angela is, you know, we presume to be the girl who survived the motorboat accident at the beginning. They go to Camp Arawak, and I will say that, you know, oh my gosh, this movie, so unfortunately the scene with Aunt Martha doesn't last very long, and we never, except for one brief period at the very end of the movie, which is live-withable. We never see her. She's not in the movie very much, so, because that character really just, oh my gosh, just the way she talks is kind of really annoying to me. So after the introduction of, you know, older Ricky and older Angela, we see them, you know, basically arrive at Camp Arawak, and all these kids arrive at Camp Arawak, and once again the music, oh my gosh, does anyone know if there's any, like, I don't know, if there's any way yet to get this movie on soundtrack? You know, there's been a big trend lately of, you know, all kinds of outfits putting out vinyl records and stuff of all these horror movie soundtracks. Does anyone know if anyone put out, you know, a vinyl record or any other means of the soundtrack? Because the soundtrack is so unbelievable. You know, it'd be nice to really nice to have some of this stuff just in, you know, the music just on its own. But you know, the music is absolutely fantastic for this kind of magical arrival of all these kids to summer camp, and this kind of absolutely like ridiculous fairy tale detail of basically all these kids running out of the bus. So you've got all these kids just running around to this first introduction scene of the characters arriving at camp. These kids are constantly probably exhausted, these poor kids, take after take, just okay, you know, background action, kids running, okay, action. It's just like, it's just kind of find it really weird that all these kids, even the fat ones, are basically just non-stop running around and running from the buses to the, I don't know if that's something that Robert Hiltzik experienced in his summer camp going life or what, but it's a detail in this movie that every time I watch it is always kind of like weird, like just this constant marathon of young kids running from the buses to their cabin or whatever. But so we introduce, you know, when we just recently introduced Ricky and Angela, now we're introducing Paul. I don't think Paul's a relative. Is he just a friend of Ricky's or whatever? And, you know, like at this point we learn that Angela's kind of shy, and Paul informs Ricky of, I'm going to try to not do a beat by beat. So far I'm doing a beat by beat pretty much, but informs Ricky about Judy, you know, Ricky's, you know, steady from last summer. You know, having, you know, basically got a little more how can I say this? A little more endowed in the chest area since the previous summer or whatever, and should be said that the character of Judy is absolutely, unlike Aunt Martha, you know, Judy is a bitch, kind of plays a bitch in a way that's actually fun to behold, in a bitch character that's actually fun to watch because she does it with such conviction. It's really fun to watch this Judy character. So we introduce Paul, and not long after Judy, and unfortunately this pervert guy, this pervert cook guy by the name of, what the hell's his name? You know what? I'm sorry, it escapes me. I don't know what the hell the name of the character of this, you know, this kind of pervert cook guy is. But we're basically introduced to this guy as being a pedophile, and, you know, oh my gosh, we're setting up a possible threat, you know, definitely a threat situation. Not long later, you know, I don't know if it's like been a couple days later or whatever, you know, basically since Angela's just quiet, won't talk, won't eat, won't do nothing, maybe homesick or whatever, Oh, don't let me forget to mention Ronnie, the muscle man kind of character of this movie, which is, it's really weird. I mean, he's just I mean, he's not particularly well endowed in like the acting arena or area. I mean, he passes in this movie. You gotta, for a movie of this budget and just being independent. Half of the charm is just some of the non-professional performers. There's some actual real actors in this, and then there's some obviously not real actors. And part of the charm is some of the pardon me, lesser acting, or less, not as, some of the characters with maybe not as good as acting. It's part of the charm of a low budget movie or anything. But then you got Ronnie and Mel. Mel's the owner of the camp. This is a guy who's been in all kinds of stuff, like a year prior, Just Before Dawn, and probably all kinds of other movies and stuff. So that guy's like a seasoned actor, the guy who plays Mel. Really, really fantastic character in this movie. So basically we learn that Angela hasn't been eating, talking, nothing, so Ronnie brings her over this cook guy, and I want to say it's Morty or something like that. And unfortunately, of course, obviously they don't know anything about his pedophile tendencies or whatever, so Morty takes, or whatever the hell it, Morty takes Angela into the pantry to, oh my gosh, he's gonna undo his pants, and oh my gosh, maybe we can find something, for you to eat in the walk-in. You never know what you're going to find in there. So basically, his intention is to stuff his you-know-what in Angela's mouth, and it's just like, luckily Ricky comes in looking for Angela and saves the day, but the guy's like, don't tell anyone about this, you didn't see nothing, you hear me, nothing. And the kids run away, and the guy's just like, fuck! I mean, he doesn't say that, but he's all pissed that, I don't know, probably a combination of he didn't do what he wanted to, and oh my gosh, someone, witnessed this, or, maybe, oh my gosh. So later on, God, after this part, I'm not going to do a beat by beat, but what's kind of cool about what happens next is, this movie plays like Friday 13th in the sense that we just see, like, hands and arms of the killer, and obviously since they're like little hands and arms, we're assuming it's a kid. Basically, at this point, I think we're meant to assume that Ricky is, I can spoil the details of this movie, I mean, at this point. So if you haven't seen this movie for some reason and you don't want to be spoiled, you probably shouldn't watch any more of this review. But, basically, from what I understand, it's Jonathan Tiersten, who actually played Ricky, who does, in fact, maybe has a little bit of misdirection, who does, in fact, do all the hands and arms and hands and the kill, the stuff that Angela is supposed to be doing in this movie. I think it is his actually arms and hands doing all the stuff. As I said, maybe in a, kind of a misdirection, subliminal misdirection thing or whatever. Even so far as, from what I understand, that one shot at the very end of the movie when Angela kills Judy, even that silhouette in the doorway is actually Jonathan Tiersten with a wig on, just to, I don't know, just to be looking goofy or weird or whatever. Unfortunately, I don't think we're supposed to be able to, the Blu-ray, which I reviewed years ago, I'm not going to do a review of the Blu-ray because I've already done that in depth years ago when it came out, but the Blu-ray is probably a little too bright. You probably can see the face of the character in that silhouetted door thing a little too more than you're supposed to, but where the hell was I going? Oh, what's really cool about this, first, I see you can't call it a kill because it's not a kill. What's really cool about this first event scene, or whatever the hell you want to call it, a revenge scene in this movie, is it's not a kill. Most of the times in these horror movies and stuff, it's a kill. Well, basically, we'll just say Angela at this point, because it is Angela. Well, there's been all kinds of, fan chatter over the years and stuff about, are they both doing it, and, is Ricky doing it and Angela doing it? I'm just going to assume that it's Angela doing all this stuff. Basically, there's this huge, big, pot of, boiling corn, and from what I understand, they had to actually manufacture, they had to make this pot big enough for the intended purpose of this, movie. This huge, ridiculously, it's not even safe, as you'll see in this scene, this ridiculously huge, tall pot of boiling water with, corn on the cob in it, you know, this guy's boiling and stuff, and Angela does this thing where he pulls the chair out from under him, kind of, and it I don't know, it gets caught up against this thing, and he's like leaning over the, you know, if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. So we'll just say, to cut the review shorter, this guy, you know, Angela ends up pulling the chair out from him. He grabs onto this thing and pulls this whole boiling, you know, pot of water all over him, lands on the ground. And what's really cool about this first, you know, which would normally be a kill in this movie, is it's not a kill. This guy, this pedophile guy, kind of gets, you know, it's funny because if you think about it, if she just killed him, he'd, you know, it'd be a little bit of pain and then it'd be over. This guy actually gets something worse than a kill. He gets, you know, days and days and days and days. I don't know how long this would hurt for, but days and days of unbearable pain of being like burned over the majority of his body with this scalding hot water. And they, you know, pretty good effects for, you know, this low budget movie. They actually have some bladder effects where this, you know, this guy's just screaming in agony on the ground, and this has become bladder effects on his cheeks and stuff like that. Really, really good effects. The one guy, the black older cook guy, comes in, and there's so many funny shots of people, like in the motorboat scene, of just like just these stone face kind of things, and the black guy comes in and he's like, so many of these faces are so funny, that some of the, you know, reactions of some characters due to some of these things. So basically, the first kill in this movie isn't a kill; it's more like an injure, which in a way is almost kind of, like I say, more hurtful to the character than a kill, because instead of just a moment of pain and you know, eternal peace afterwards, it's like, you know, weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, or however long, of pain, and then this, you know, a lifetime of scarred, you know, skin and stuff. So the pedophile guy almost got it, you know, even though he lived, he almost got it worse than the rest of the people who end up dying in the movie, which is kind of interesting. So obviously at this point, I think pretty much everyone concerned, you know, Mel and Ronnie and everyone concerned, probably just think this was an accident and have no idea that it was an intentional thing done by one of the very shy, quiet campers of Camp Arawak. So, you know, life goes on. You just, in a funny scene, you know, Mel tells some of the cooks or the people working in the kitchen just to keep it quiet, and we'll just say he got another job should anyone happen to ask, and do all this kind of stuff. And, you know, it's just, the guy who plays Mel is so fantastic in this movie, and in a way it'd be cool if there were more scenes of him, but, you know, there's a decent amount of scenes of Mel. One of the next scenes of noteworthiness I want to mention is like the softball scene, which a lot of people, you know, I'm not a sports fan by any stretch of the imagination. I can't stand sports, but, you know, to see a scene of like just kids and teenagers and stuff just having a half-assed game of softball at summer camp is much more of something that's, you know, I don't know, it's better that, you know, I'd rather watch that than some kind of movie like Major League or some shit where it's at a, you know, pro ballpark and you got all these, you know, quote-unquote pro players or whatever the hell that movie's about. Just there's something just kind of endearing or whatever, or quote-unquote American or something, just about, you know, these kids just wearing their just clothes and just, you know, trying to be all baseball-ish like, and playing just a little game of softball. So I have seen on forums and stuff people complaining about, in this movie, the softball game, and they say it just like that, to them it lasts like 20 minutes, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think the softball scene in this movie is absolutely, you know, like kind of like Friday 13th. I think the softball scene in this movie is the absolute perfect length, where we see like an inning with, you know, these one kids, you know, at bat, and then the other kids. Then later on we'll see the other kids at bat, and we'll see them win, you know, Ricky's cabin or whatever, and, you know, Ricky and Paul's cabin and stuff, and then the rival. See, this scene is kind of important because it kind of introduces the rivalry between Ricky, Paul, and these other cabin of kids or whatever. There's this kind of rivalry which will, in a small way, continue throughout the movie, and they'll kind of, you know, make fun of Angela later on. So it's a little bit of a setup for you know, a little bit of a small detail of what happens later on in the movie. But, you know, setup aside, the scene to me is just completely and totally enjoyable, because even as a kid, let's face it, I mean, you know, 12 years old, 11, 12 years old, I did this, maybe not like, you know, this many people and this, you know, real of a situation. But, you know, I think a lot of kids did this kind of stuff where they did the softball stuff. And, you know, so it's just, I think this scene where a lot of people actually complain about this scene, I think this scene is absolutely fantastic, and is, from, you know, for my money, it could have even been twice as long as it is in the movie. Like we see four, you know, maybe not complete innings, but, you know, it could have been even longer for me. That's how much I think this scene was really, really, you know, conceived and executed in a fantastic way. And it shows this insight into youth hanging out, you know, rival youth hanging out with each other that isn't seen particularly that often, where it's just like they're playing this game, but all they're just saying is just like, take the bat off your shoulder, fuck you, and just like, they're just such assholes to each other. It's so much for, like, you know, friendly play, or, you know, any kind of just decent play. It's just, you know, it's so realistic is what I'm trying to say. It's just, it's so fantastically captures what really happens when, you know, basically teenage guys get together to play a game. It's just, I think it's really, really cool. The character of Mozart, every time I watch this, you know, the more I watch this, the more I'm like, God, I wish Mozart would have been a bigger character. He's a character that's kind of like a little more on the pudgy side, which he's introduced. Basically, the kids, twice in the movie, play a prank on him. The mind over matter is the first thing we see pulled on him, and then you know, sleeping and putting the whatever shaving cream in his hand and tickling his nose so he goes. But for my money, I would have been cool if Mozart had actually been a bigger, more prominently featured character. But he kind of saves the day in a really cool bit where he actually does a, you know, it's an outfielder or whatever, and catches the ball and throws it back and saves the day. And it's really kind of a cool bit where they show this kid's not just the foil of these other kids, but he's actually, you know, appreciated, hopefully, at that moment. That's really cool. But you know, I should probably get on to the rest of the review, but I didn't want to forget to say that how much I think, you know, a lot of people complain about the softball scene. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think, you know, for being basically Robert Hiltzik first movie and being in his mid-20s, I think, you know, he wrote and directed this. I mean, I think the pacing of this movie is pretty spot on. I think it really goes along at a really fantastic pace. It's just incredible how just this guy's, you know, just first movie or whatever. We might as well just say, even though it's not, we might as well just say, I feel better saying his only movie. Because let's face it, that's kind of how I regard, you know, Robert Hiltzik, as far as I'm concerned, his filmography just includes this one movie in my book. So, but it is really amazing how, you know, competently this movie was conceived and executed for being a mid-20-something's first time writer / director. I think the pacing is really, you know, maybe not perfect, but really, you know, I really enjoy the pacing. I think the pacing is absolutely fantastic. As I was saying about the softball game, the movie really captures this, you know, just teen kids, you know, young kids, or, you know, and teen kids just on their own, just wrecking havoc in a really kind of a cool, you know, cool way. Later on, after the softball game, the guys want to talk all the girls into going skinny dipping, and very realistically so. I would imagine the girls, none of them are interested in that, so the boys just are like, we're going to show you, and they all go running off on the dock bare-assed, and which was kind of fortunately in the first DVD that Anchor Bay put out, that shot was cut out for whatever reason. But of course the Scream Factory Blu-ray restores everything that was cut out of the first DVD. And I can't say I'm thrilled to have the shot of the guys, you know, bare-assed running, you know, on the dock and jumping in the water. But whatever, I guess I'd rather have the complete cut of this movie. But it's so funny seeing them, like, after being turned down by the girls, just saying, okay, come on, boys, you know, we know how to have fun. Hell with you then, we don't need you. So we'll go all jump in the water naked together and just pretend like we're having a good time. But what ends up happening later on here is this one character of Kenny basically gets this character of Leslie to go out in a canoe, and I don't understand, you know, you think a teenage boy, you know, especially if they got a girl that looks like Leslie out in a canoe, would I don't understand just the bulliness of these characters. It almost seems like, you know, some of this stuff was written for younger, but I can see younger boys, you know, maybe 10 or 12 or 10, 11 or 12 or 13 doing this to girls, but the age that Kenny and Leslie are in this movie, by that age you think you'd be more wanting to, not aggravate the girl, because that's going to give you less of a chance to do what, or to, you know what I'm saying. So I didn't want to forget to mention that this scene with Kenny, basically taking Leslie out on a nighttime canoe trip with once again, the absolutely fantastic music, kind of just foreboding, like, no, no, no. Oh my God, it's so fantastic. It'd really be nice to have a soundtrack of this score for finally. But basically Kenny just takes Leslie out on this canoe to taunt her and tease her, and better not leave your hand in there too long. All this water snakes and snapping turtles come out at night, and he's just taunting Leslie, and if you fall in the water you could be eaten alive. And eventually he's just going like this, "Quit rocking it, will you?" And what's the matter? Well, I can't remember the rest of the dialogue, but anyway, he turns the canoe over and she's like, "You bastard, I hate you," and swims back to shore. But I wanted to mention Leslie, she's like pretty goddamn attractive, in this movie, and I just like her character. This is the only scene she's in, and that's kind of having just rewatched this recently, that's kind of a bummer. I would have liked to have her be featured much more in this movie than she is. It's just like, she's really kind of cute. She's kind of a cool character. Why is she only in this one scene? It's kind of a bummer, but of course later on, Kenny goes under the canoe that's tipped over, and you can't really tell why he's doing. I think someone had to tell me why he's doing this, but he's like talking, the canoe's tipped over and he goes up, comes up under the canoe, and he's like, "Leslie, hey you." I think he's kind of just having fun with the acoustics of the canoe flipped over, but you can't really, in the sound design, or you can't really tell that the sound isn't really any different. They maybe should have tried to make it a little more echoey so we'd understand what the hell he's doing. But of course then a head pops up in front of frame, and we can't tell if it's a boy or girl head because of just the way it's done, kind of like the beginning of the movie. And of course, the Angela in the first, I think this is the second event scene in the first killing in the movie, basically drowns Kenny. And let's face it, I mean, yeah, it's the way it's done as the years go on is a little, kind of just like, who would just, I don't know, let's face it, the drowning of Kenny is kind of a little more on the half-ass side. But again, it's the early 80s, this is his first movie, whatever, we go with it. So the next morning, this one guy who works at the camps just reluctantly picking up trash, all this stuff that the asshole kids had thrown into the water. He's picking this stuff up only to turn over the canoe to see this relatively fantastic. They created a whole kind of dummy of Kenny from, maybe bust up or whatever, of the guy who played Kenny, and so they could do this corpse of Kenny having been just in the water all night. And there's this really nasty bit where this little water snake, or whatever the hell it is, snake comes out of his mouth, and which was really heavily cut in the first Anchor Bay DVD, but luckily now is completely restored in the Scream Factory Blu-ray/DVD release. It's really, really a cool scene, and nasty, of course, with the bit with the snake coming out of the mouth. Really, it's accentuating the nastiness of the scene. And again, this time it's a death in this movie. It basically is, it doesn't show signs of being necessarily a homicide or a killing. They just it's just kind of written off as an accident. Of course, that's the way Mel would like it to be. He doesn't want to acknowledge, or who the hell wants to be the owner of a camp where someone's killing kids. So, the second event scene, or the first death in the movie, is written off just like the first event scene is just another accident. So what do you know? This is camp accidents, I guess. So as the movie goes on, more and more things happen where these guys, it's so funny, these guys are all having a water balloon fight on the top of a cabin, and one of them throws a water balloon and smacks Angela, of course. I'm assuming, I don't think oh yeah. The guy who will later on be killed later on, or who will later on be killed later on, is the guy, I think, who threw the water balloon at her. It's not really easy to see, but I guess we can see him, you know, holding his hand out, you know, ready to get, I think they hand him a water balloon and then we just see it hit her, so we were just assuming this is the guy who threw it at her. So later on, you know, this guy will of course be killed in another scene that could be written off as an accident, where it's unfortunately, you know, the older I get and the more time that passes, this scene, and kind of like the canoe scene in a way, is a little bit, it's a cool idea, but unfortunately the way it's realized, you know, with the bees, you know, locking this guy taking a crap, just like some of the Friday the 13th movies, there's a crap in this movie as well. I don't know what it is with summer camp horror movies and craps, but whatever, it's just a thing. You know, I think this came out like the same year as Friday the 13th Part 3 too, so it's just like all these craps came out in '82, but craps at camp. But unfortunately, you know, Angela shoves a broom handle or something through the door so he can't get out, and unfortunately this kill is a little bit, you know, probably even more lame than the drowning, or just as lame in a way. I mean, it's cool, but unfortunately, you know, basically, you know, he gets barricaded into the shitter, and then goes around. Angela goes around the outside, and in the cool scene, kind of cuts the screen open and throws a little hornet's nest or bee's nest in there. And the problem I have with this scene is they add all these bee sounds, but except for the last shot of this scene, we don't see basically any bees flying around, which is really kind of hard to, you know, really accept the more you watch it. It's just like, oh man. Not that I advocate for them to, you know, put in CG bees now. It's just like part of you almost wants them to do that. But, you know, the scene's kind of cool. I mean, the kills in this movie are really, I mean, some of them, like this one included, are kind of unique and not really, you know, unique to the slasher movie genre and stuff, you know, because I guess Hiltzik was thinking, well, I got to do kills in a way that a lot of these could be accidents and stuff. So, you know, the fact that you put this, you know, hornet's nest or bee's nest in here and just have the bees all stinging them to death is kind of cool. One of the other fakey things about this scene, though, is just the fact that you could just simply crawl underneath the door, I mean, to get away. So, I mean, there's a lot of things about this scene, unfortunately, that if you want to tear it apart, which apparently I have, is just kind of like, oh man. But luckily, the payoff shot of the last shot of this, you know, kill scene is cool, because all of a sudden they did manage to do this fake dummy of this guy's head and this arm, which is all stung up by bees and stuff, and they do this tracking shot down along the arm, and you know, to the head, which is all covered with bees. When luckily in this shot, it's just permeated with bees flying around. So at least they did that. But it would have been nice to have more bees in the other shots of his legs, and you know, the top of the shitter as well, and seeing just whatever. But whatever, I mean, it's a low budget movie and it was the early 80s and whatever. So in an effort to make the review shorter, I kind of didn't mention the bit briefly. I'll just mention briefly throughout the movie, with all these kills and stuff happening and all these accidents and stuff happening. Also, there's this kind of drama between, you know, this Paul and Angela character, where he actually gets her talking, and they actually kind of, just in a small teen way, or teen way, kind of get sweet on each other or whatever. So, you know, the more days and nights that progress of that, you know, the more obviously Paul wants and kisses and does all this stuff to Angela and stuff. And there's this cool scene on the beach or whatever where he's like kissing on her and she's just looking up like in a trance, and we see this really cool, you know, flashback scene of, like, of course, these two guys from the beginning of the movie. We find out that they were probably, in fact, you know, gay lovers and stuff, and you know, maybe Dad was a gay lover or something. We don't know whatever happened to Mom, but we see a flashback of these two kids from the beginning of the movie, you know, seeing, you know, at the door, you know, looking in or laughing at the door, seeing this, and it's all lit in this really cool kind of just dreamlike, non-realistic dreamlike way, with this heavy just top lighting or side lighting, all this kind of stuff. And there's this really cool bit on the bed where these two kids are just sitting on a bed that's rotating around, and once again the music in this scene is absolutely fantastic, and this bed's rotating around and this boy's like just sitting here pointing at the girl. And what Hiltzik does, or has the editor do or whatever, is like a couple times when this thing's turning around, like it'll do a dissolve, and the girl, you know, will replace the boy, and the boy will replace the girl. It's hard to say. You all you guys that are watching this have probably seen the movie, so you know what I'm saying. That bit about the dissolve or the rotating bed and the girls and boys trading places is just such a cool, or dissolving over each other is really a cool kind of just a subtle hint of what's to come towards the end of the movie. But this little flashback thing sends Angela just kind of pushing Paul away and running away and stuff. So basically throughout the course of the movie we kind of more and more realize that Angela's got some kind of mystery past that, gosh, we wonder what it could be. So towards the end of the movie, a couple of counselors get the night off, including Meg. I didn't even mention Meg. That's because I don't want to have this review be like 6 hours long. Meg, this character, who I think this actress who was also kind of a more professional actress versus a lot of the other kids, including, of course, Jonathan Tiersten, who I don't think had really done much of anything at all before the movie. But this girl who plays Meg, who incidentally is really probably one of the more attractive women in this movie, probably the most attractive, featured player, has this bitchy character of Meg, and she kind of teams up, which I didn't mention, she teams up with Judy throughout the movie and kind of makes fun of and gives Angela a hard time, which is a complete, just such a bummer to see. Like, I can see campers being mean to Angela, but to see a counselor being mean to Angela really, really, really pisses you off. So what I was going to mention here is towards the end of the movie, Meg gets the night off, and this is a thing that just completely never made any sense to me. Like, one of the most attractive girls in this movie, just after receiving the night off, first thing she does is skips over to, well, I don't think really, but might as well skip over to Mel, who's the older, I don't know how old he is in this movie, probably in his 60s, the older camp owner. It's just like, so remember that dinner you promised me? And so all of a sudden she goes over to Mel, this older guy, and wants to basically, and asks him out pretty much for a dinner that night or whatever. And it's just, I think pretty much every freaking, whether it's you're a man or a woman or boy or girl or whatever, pretty much every viewer sees this scene in the exact same light. Like, what the fuck is this, Meg and Mel thing about? And I'm one of them. I'm just like, she's like probably one of the most attractive, girls in this movie, and she's like, skipping over to this guy, and it's just like, oh well. So what's so funny is later on when she's gonna go take a shower, she sees Judy, and she's like, I got me a date tonight. With who? And she's like, it's a secret. Like, she won't even tell anyone. Like, she knows. Oh my gosh, it's just really weird. But obviously this scene goes, would go on to be the famous, the shower scene where Meg gets knifed in the shower. And again, it's good, as the movie goes on, the kills become a little more apparent. Like, they start as accidents, but I think as they go on, it becomes more and more evident. Like, obviously Meg was obviously knifed in the shower. You got a big scar down your back. It's not like you accidentally, backed into a knife when you were taking a shower. So as the movie goes on, the kills become less and less of like things that could pass as accidents and more of like deliberate kills. But again, the fakey thing about that scene is, she backs up against the shower, and then I even say Ricky because he did it in the movie. Angela stabs her through the shower and basically just runs the knife down her back, and all she's got to do is just step away from the shower wall, and she won't be able to be slit open from the back. But whatever, it's like I say, it's just a lot of the kills are just, unfortunately, as cool as they are in an early 80s low budget way, a lot of them are just like, well, she could have just done this, or he could have just done that, or whatever. So, but whatever, you go with it once again. And Meg freaking dies in the shower scene. That's original. So towards the end of the movie, they do this bit where there's these kids that, as Angela, got thrown in the water by Meg. Ricky pulls her out, and they're walking out. There's these little kids that throw sand on them. I think basically these kids that are taken out into a camp out scene are basically the kids that threw sand. It's not really explained very well, but I think it's the kids that threw sand on them when they were coming out of the lake. This guy takes these kids on a camp out, and this scene is a little, I don't know, it's a little short. Like, it would have been nice maybe to have a little more scene with the kids, maybe them at the fire or something like that, because all they really do is just go out to the site, and then cut back to something at camp, and then back to them just sleeping. But basically off camera, Angela basically just hacks these kids that, you know, a lot of these kids up that threw sand on them up with this little hatchet thing, and the counselor guy comes back after dropping two of the kids back off at camp, comes back. He just, you know, he's so, what's that word? Responsible. This guy's not very responsible to leave these kids just laying there in the middle of the woods by themselves as he brings these two whiny kids back to camp. But when he comes back, he sees that they've all been chopped up, and he pukes up seeing it, and they've all been chopped to pieces in a kind of a scene which is kind of hard to tell what the hell happened to them, because we just basically just see this wide shot of the sleeping bags all chopped up sitting there. We don't get any close-ups or details of what's going on, but you can tell, especially in the Blu-ray, you can tell that, you know, they're basically all hacked up and just chopped up with a hatchet and stuff. So, ugh. So then next, in a scene that we've all been waiting the whole movie for, we see basically Judy making out with this one guy, and gosh, she just complains about everything. Do you have to kiss so wet? And basically Mel comes into the cabin looking for Meg, and then that kind of scares this guy off, and she's just like, what's so funny is she complains when they're kissing, and then she complains when he goes away. It's like this bitch isn't happy no matter what the hell happened. So she's basically left to her own devices in the cabin, and then later on, frickin', you know, Angela enters the cabin. Of course we don't, you know, see Angela or whatever. Once again, it's probably like Ricky standing in the doorway with a wig on, I think. But in this cool scene that's really handled in a great way, where it's just really dimly, darkly lit cabin, and Judy's in there all alone, and she's just like, "Oh, it's you. Well, what do you want?" Well, and we just see Judy get hit in the face by this character, in which, you know, I guess it's basically kind of half knocks her out and half, you know, basically half knocks her out, and she's laying on the cot just like, and she was basically trying to curl her hair or straighten her hair or do whatever the hell she was doing with this hair iron, this hot, you know, hair iron thing or whatever the hell it is, curling iron. And we see basically the killer pick it up off this blanket, and Hiltzik does this cool thing where you can see the blanket's burnt where, you know, it was just laying there for a few moments. And in one of the most awesome kind of kills in this movie. Well, I don't know, I mean, if this kills, it's kind of confusing, because I don't know if we're, I mean, she's dead obviously, but I don't know if we're led to believe that just the excruciating pain of this event killed her or whatever. But in a really cool way, you know, the killer just takes the, you know, pillow over her head, and she's just kind of just like in and out of whatever consciousness, or half in and out of consciousness, and we just see this shadow of the thing on the wall. Once again, the music is so cool and like simple in this scene. We just see the shadow on the wall of the thing coming down, and then it's like opens and it goes down to where, I mean, we can only assume this is entering her womanhood or whatever you want to call it. And then her arms, shadow of her arms come up into the screen with her muffled like scream of like, not to mention the nice sound of tss. So I think we can only assume this is, you know, maybe I'm a pervert, maybe I'm not, but I think we can only assume this is entering her, as I said, womanhood area. In a scene that is just like, you know what, I don't think any of us could have thought of a worse demise for this character than Hiltzik did. That's one hell of a creative scene, and something that is really not, I mean, ever seen, and probably ever seen before or since. That is absolutely just, as the movie winds down here, it just piles up these kills almost literally like one after another. It's really kind of a cool end of the movie crescendo. And what's great about Judy's death, or Judy's whatever, burning, is you don't have to see a thing, and it's still as excruciatingly painful as, you know, maybe even more so, as if you saw the flesh burning on the end of the steaming hot, you know, curling iron or whatever the hell it is. I mean, you don't need to see anything, just hear it and just see shadows. I mean, how cool is that? So basically Mel, the owner of the camp, throughout, like halfway through the movie or whatever, has deduced, because of Ricky's behavior throughout the movie, that he has deduced that Ricky is the killer. So towards the end of the movie, basically, he catches him in the middle of, or not in the middle of the night, but at night or something like that, and he's beating him up, and he's like, "I saw you those times, you know, liar, liar." he's beating on Ricky and only to like him run away, and he's like, I gotta get away. And he runs. Of course, this is only like what 3 years after the original Friday the 13th, and it kind of a scene that might be a little bit of a something inspired by the original Friday the 13th or not. Kind of runs over to the archery range, and it's just like looks over in the distance, and it's like, it can't be you. It can't be. And we see, just in the foreground, this character holding an arrow. I think she's like twisting it around or whatever, possibly, but in a scene that happens really quick and something that's really relatively done well for being a low budget movie, he's like, it can't be you. It can't be. And as soon as he says that, like the arrow goes right through his neck on screen, and it's just like, oh my God, it happens so quick you don't even expect. You're not even expecting it. It's almost looks like a snuff movie right there. Like, oh my God, that's just like, obviously, on repeat viewings and frame by frame and stuff, you can see how they did it. But when you just first see it, when you're watching the movie, it's just like, oh my God, and a kill that's really kind of cool for a summer camp horror movie kill, but also unfortunately, it's almost like over before it even starts. It goes, Mel's kill goes by a little quick. In my opinion, and also talking about it now, it's kind of like, in a way, I don't know why she even kills Mel, because I don't really regard him as being necessarily, he was nice in a kind of a way to Angela, and you gotta get on dry clothes before you catch pneumonia. He wasn't really an asshole. Maybe her reasoning is that he's covering up these murders. I don't know why, if you really think about it, why she even kills Mel, because I don't think he was particularly that mean to her. But whatever, Mel still dies. So normally this would probably be maybe a 3-star movie for me, but I gotta tell you, the ending of this movie, it earns a whole star on its own right. I don't know, it's probably even worth more than that, but the ending of this movie is absolutely beyond classic. And as I said, when I first saw it when I was probably 13 years old, or maybe just having 12, just going on 13, or having just turned 13 recently, as I said, as a hetero boy, I was just like, oh my God, it's the ending for the ages. It's an ending that, unfortunately, Robert Hiltzik tried to do a kind of a surprise ending in his Return to Sleepaway Camp, which was just a bad idea. There's no way anyone could basically ever, do such a shock ending, probably ever in cinema history again. The whole idea of having Angela be, not the girl that survived, but the boy survived, but the goofy freaking Aunt Martha already had a boy, so he turned the boy into a girl. Oh my God. That just shocked generations of movie viewers just around the world. Holy shit. And something that's really shouldn't even necessarily be that big a deal is just somehow just like, the scariest thing about this movie is the fact that Angela's got a dick. So, oh my gosh. So 4 stars out of 4 stars for Sleepaway Camp. As I said, it maybe be a 3-star movie, but just that ending just earns another star and makes this movie just something that's so... it's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, but for being, in his mid-20s and having it be his first, movie, it's just absolutely phenomenal. The music couldn't accompany the movie any better. The music is really, really a huge part of the identity of this movie. The music is, I can't stress enough how great the music is in this movie. Just as, must have in your summer camp horror movie collection. Like, if you're a horror movie fan of particularly the early 80s and you don't have this in your collection, you probably, I don't know, you probably should. It's a movie that is really, really, really enjoyable, and Scream Factory's recent Blu-ray release is something that was very, very, very much appreciated by me. And if you haven't already checked out my review of the, the Scream Factory Blu-ray/DVD combo release that I did years ago whenever they released the movie. But they did, maybe 2014 is probably when it came out on Blu-ray, I'm thinking. But feel free to head over to that review, because I already reviewed the Blu-ray years ago. But thank you very much for watching this, what is probably an overly extended and way too long of a review. If you've made it to the end, wow, thank you very much for doing so. And as always, we'll catch you on the next movie review.
I'm
Hello?
sorry, Catherine.
Hi.
Hey, you can hear me, huh?
Yes, I can hear you.
How
Thank
you
you
guys
for calling in.
Doing really good. Thanks for calling in.
Well, I just had a question. How was it playing such a mean girl?
It was great. That's like I was playing a kind of a mean character. Well, not mean, but kind of a little with an attitude on All My Children at the time, this character named Pamela Kingsley. So when I got this part, I was kind of used to playing that kind of character. And, I think in those days, too, the brunette sort of got the feisty, kind of uppity girl. And it was great because it's complete opposite of me. I'm actually a very nice person. So it was really great to play something that I'll never be, hopefully, and never have become. So that was kind of cool. And I remember at the audition with Robert Hiltzik, we just had to improvise. And he wanted me to improvise being really nasty and mean to all these little kids that I was their counselor. And, so I guess I did a good job because I got the part, so.
It's amazing that she pulled that up because she is the antithesis of that character.
Aww, thank you. I'll pay you later.
No, she was my big sister who I had a crush on her, but.
Well, we had to beat the girls. We had to beat the girls away with a stick for you. Keep them away from you.
Please.
How old were you when you did that? I can't remember.
I was 17.
What? Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! Do you still have a baby face?
I do.
Wow.
I'd take a picture on my Mac for you if you like. But
definitely.
When you go to look up my band, you can see pictures and stuff. It's
fantastic.
My last name backwards, which is 10 Tears.
Oh my gosh! Wait. Oh, fantastic! Oh, I'm excited. Well, if you come to Vegas, I'm gonna try to come see you. All right?
Oh, of course. You kidding?
Definitely.
So caller, what else do you have for Catherine?
I was just interested in knowing what she thought of her death and how if she was nervous or anything like that or had done anything like that before.
Oh, yes. Thank you for asking. I was extremely nervous. I'd never done anything like that before other than being in a coma on All My Children. And so I was extremely nervous about it. But I also got really sick with the flu the night we were shooting that scene. And I had like 102 fever, and I had to be in this cold water and then fall out of the shower grab the shower curtain. And it also took them a really long time to do the scar on my back, hours and hours. So it was actually perfect. I kind of just slept the whole time. I was on cold medicine.
Remember who actually stabbed you?
Was it you?
It was me.
It was you! Oh.
That's the old story of who.
Oh, my gosh. I totally forgot about that. Oh, my gosh.
That shower door?
Wow, that's right. Oh, my gosh.
You were almost naked, and at 17, I was like losing it.
Unbelievable.
It was horrible.
I think after having a few kids, my memory has gone a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah, tell me about it.
But, yeah, no, that was definitely a memory I'll never forget. I have like a whole photo album full of pictures of all of that because I was so fascinated how they did that scar and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Those people will go crazy.
Oh, my God. I'll show it to you first. I'll send them to you first and tell me what you think.
Okay. I can screen them.